What happens when two bass road warriors spend quality time talking music and life with one of their peers? Bassist, educator, author David C. Gross and bassist and head honcho of KnowYourBassPlayer.com, Tom Semioli, trade dates with the legends of rock, jazz, funk, blues, folk, country, and more. Notes from an artist, revealing conversations with the legends who've created the soundtrack of our lives. What happens? You're about to find out. It's another episode of Notes from an Artist.
We welcome our listener back to a percussive episode of Notes from an Artist. I am your host, Tom Semioli, along with my co-host, David C. Gross, who knows a thing or two about the art of striking one solid object with another with some degree of force. Say hello to our listener, David.
Rat-a-tat-tat. Hello, Karen. How are you tonight?
As bass players, David, you'd think we'd have had more drummers on the show. We've only had three so far, Chris Parker, Denny Sywell, and Kevin Godley. But tonight, we have a fourth drummer and a true master of the art form, Michael Shrieve. Now, tonight we are talking to Michael from his home in Seattle. He's in Seattle, we are not. About his latest release, Drums of Compassion, which features many special guests, as you will learn from our conversation. Drums of Compassion is out now on 7D Records, which is a label helmed by a friend of the show, David, Trey Gunn, who is also on the record.
That is true. Yes, indeed. Hello, Trey, if you're listening.
Hello, Trey. We've sold a lot of 7D Records. We've had his artists on.
Go me the money!
This is not only a musical voyage for Michael, but it's a spiritual trip as well. Talk about his approach to making records, the 20-year journey that it took to create Drums of Compassion and bring it to fruition. It's a fascinating song cycle. Drums of Compassion is a labor of love. The narrative of this record sort of transcends Michael's musical goals. It's a personal trek for him and for his audience. And lest we mentioned, Michael is known to the masses as a founding member of Santana, and members of the Santana band are featured on Drums of Compassion. We do discuss some interesting aspects of Michael's time in Santana. David, he played quite a prominent role in that band from 1969 to 1974, and they had a successful reunion of the surviving original band back in 2016.
You know, I did not know that he was manipulating tape back then. I think on the Caravanserai record, did a lot of edits. I think there was one tune, he said there was like 23 edits to it?
Right.
I think there was one, two, he said there was like 23 edits to
right. That's on the opening track, and we're going to play the closing track on our playlist, which we'll get to in a minute. You know, it's interesting. Probably close to 1 billion people have heard Michael Shrieve with Santana. I mean, for 55 years, those songs have been playing on the radio. They've been in films and television. And of course, Carlos is still out there touring and recording and touring as we speak. So yes, I do recommend our listeners check out some of the more obscure, by Santana standards, albums that Michael played on, as you mentioned, Caravanserai, however you pronounce that. We'll have to ask him again. Welcome, Barbarella, Lotus, which is a fascinating record, and Love Devotion and Surrender. David, you played with Michael Shrieve.
Yes, a million years ago, we did a project where Felix Pappalardi actually was producing it, and it was Lieber Krebs Management, who are more well known for Aerosmith, AC/DC, Michael Bolton. Yeah, stuff like that.
And as we always do, listener, we have a playlist after our conversation with Michael. But before we bring Michael in, David, we have to do the plug.
That's right. We have to plug our show. Just want to let the listeners know, this is actually a really deep conversation. Michael gets into a lot of things about his creative process, spirituality. It's a really great compendium for anyone who's interested in doing something that they love in the music industry. And of course, Michael was very, very lucky to be able to be qualified on his instrument at a young age, and the incredible ride it took him and is still taking him. God bless him.
Yeah, it's a labor of love. It's a lifelong quest, obviously. And it's great that he was able to do this for himself and us. So kudos to you, Michael. Yes, and it is great for anyone. It's important listening for anyone in the music business and really in any business. It's really a motivational episode. So was that your cell phone, David?
Yes, that was my daughter.
Needs money?
Probably.
If our listener would please send money to David C. Gross. We'd graciously appreciate it. Or just Zell his daughter directly. Anyway, David, let us do the obligatory plugs. You, the audience member, may be listening to David and myself every Monday night on Cygnus Internet Radio. I shall spell that for you, CYGNUS radio.com. Cue that up on the internet browser of your choice, or whatever internet browser that Microsoft forces you to use. You, the audience member, may be listening to us on our Notes from an Artist podcast right at this very moment, David, which is available on Apple, Amazon, Buzzsprout, Spotify, and wherever podcasts are podificated. And we've all been podificated at least once or twice in our lives.
It hurts, I'll tell you.
It hurts to be podified. Please, I beg of you, subscribe to our YouTube page, which is oddly enough entitled Notes from an Artist, where you can enjoy behind the scenes and in front of the scenes video clips with some but not all of our guests, David. And be sure
you're begging?
I'm begging.
I thought
I'm
that
pleading.
was Jewish foreplay. 20 minutes of begging.
Well, we've both been through a couple of marriages, so the word beg is not foreign to us.
What started out as a serious introduction, as usual, reverts to our normal 11-year-old selves.
Yes, it's juvenile Notes from an Artist. And be sure, after you've done all this, be sure to log on to www.notesfromanartist.com to keep up with whatever we're doing at any given moment. All right, let us bring in Michael Shrieve. I see Michael Shreve's box. There he is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Loud and clear, Michael.
Yes.
How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Okay, how are things in Seattle?
Great.
Raining? Is it raining in Seattle?
Oh, it's hot here.
Oh, okay. Your Seattle Mariners are in first place. You're having a good year.
Man, I don't even follow. I'm ashamed to say.
Oh my goodness. No baseball, David. My goodness.
Well, I used to tune in at the end of the season for all the sports.
All that sports stuff.
I know the feeling.
You know the feeling. Well, you guys go back a little bit. David, you and Michael played together.
Yeah, it was a million years ago. I think it was Felix Pappalardi was producing the thing.
Oh, really? What was the project?
It was David Krebs's wife, Cheryl.
Cheryl, okay, yeah. Wow.
And let's see.
All about that.
I think you were Novo Combo at the time.
Yeah, probably if it was New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, look at that. Memories,
It's only
David.
been 45 years, Michael.
Yeah, I know. I keep finding out about some stuff I did that I had completely forgotten about, like Jim Carroll, for instance. Something I did with him that was like, oh wow, okay. And I don't know. Well, I guess it's a memory thing with age or something. But yeah, those were good years in New York. I enjoyed that period of time.
Michael, when did you live in New York City?
I lived there from about 78 to about 86, 87. I was there 10 years. So when I moved there, I moved out to Rockland County, and I had a really nice house on the Hudson and everything. And then I thought,
Were you in Grandview?
I was in Grandview, exactly.
Yeah, I had a house there as well. Jack Douglas lived down the street.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was a nice place. They had the turning point down there, and but I was too itchy. I mean, all my life I've been reading about 52nd Street and Downbeat magazine, and it's kind of like, if you're gonna go to New York, get in the city, and so that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I lived in San Francisco for 5 years, and I don't know how you could ever leave San Francisco, although the city's not in very good shape right now.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to leave San Francisco. I left San Francisco after I had a band called Automatic Man, and I'd spent a lot of time and energy and money and moved to England and recorded. And then it was time to move and go to New York City. I moved back to the Bay Area. So I was there like for the big earthquake. Mm-hmm. And some other stuff. I wouldn't necessarily move back there now. It's not. I mean, everything is so changed so much anyway. So
yeah, cities are in crisis all over the country. So
yeah,
pretty much. Well, anyway, David, let me introduce Michael to our audience member. There are some people that don't know who Michael Shrieve is, David. Hard to believe. He is a performing and recording artist. He's a drummer. He's a composer. He has created music for films and television. Michael is a band leader. He's a band member. He's a collaborator. He was president of the Pacific Northwest branch of the National Association of Recording Arts, right? My old job. He's musical director for Seattle theater groups More Music at the More. He is the curator of Bumber Drum at Seattle's annual Bumbershoot Festival. And in his spare time, he was a founding member of one of the greatest musical ensembles of the 20th century, Santana. Nice work if you can get it, Michael.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those things you listed, I don't do anymore, but I have been there, like the Grammy thing and a few other things. But yeah, it's nice to hear them listed.
I hope I reminded you of a few things. Anyway, David Michael's new album is aptly entitled Drums of Compassion, and it is a title inspired by Baba Olatunji, his 1959 album, right? Drums of Passion. And
Right.
which we'll talk about. The album is out now. It's out on Trey Gunn's 7D label. We had Trey on the show, and he is doing amazing work with 7D. It's kind of like a label like Verve or ECM or Blue Note or Tappan Zee, where you know the record is going to be worth checking out if it says 7D on it. How did you come to work with Trey and 7D on this record?
Well, Trey is actually on this record. He was living in Seattle for a while, and we met. And I've been working on this record for many years. And I had a couple of pieces where I tried different kind of solo instruments, sounds, and I tried Graham Haynes on trumpet. I tried saxophone. And then I heard something Trey did, and it just sounded unique with his war guitar, that I thought, okay, that could be nice. Let's give it a go. And he took it and just made a beautiful melody, and the sound of it sounded unique enough for me to say, yeah, let's go with this. And Trey and I got to know each other before he left and moved to Santa Fe. I was aware of his label a bit, and I was looking for a label because I didn't want to do this particular project like just self-putting it out. And it seemed like, okay, I mean, there's a really great local jazz label here that was a possibility. And I know the guys, but it felt like Trey's people were a little wider audience. And it might be better for me because of the nature of the music and because of the nature of the people that probably listen to me or follow me, because I'm not a straight ahead jazz guy whatsoever.
7D has quite a following. It's interesting. It's a niche following, but it's very, very strong one. And again, it's one of those labels you just go to and you know it's going to be worth checking out.
Yeah, hopefully that's the kind of thing like Real World used to be, you know.
Yeah.
Remember Gabriel's label, or some labels. It's like if an actor or an actress puts out a movie, you know it's worth checking out because of the quality of their work. So
you say in the press release that this record was 20 years in the making, and it's more than a record. It's an offering. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, interesting backstory with this thing, because I did start it over 20 years ago when I first moved to Seattle and I had a young family, and then they would go to sleep and I would, of course, crawl out into the night and go listen to music. It was a very active music scene in Seattle, still is, with all kinds of different stuff from, funk and rock and hip hop to pretty avant-garde stuff. It's pretty interesting. And so I enjoyed going out and just a solo guy going around town listening to music. And then I'd come home at 2 a.m. and I'd want to listen to some music, but I would never be like beat-oriented music. I'd want chill music, something ambient or some choral music or something to bring me down, so to speak. And then it occurred to me, as a drummer, what kind of music could I make and put out that I would want to put on at 2:30 in the morning? And that's how the idea came about. And I started the record with a Seattle synth player, more like a sound sculpture by the name of Jeff Grinke. And the whole idea of it was, for me, that I didn't want it to be beat oriented. And I wanted it to have drums, but I wanted the drums to be really flowing. Dare I sound like Laura Nero or somebody, but I wanted it to be really like breath, and I just wanted it to be a different thing. I've always been conscious of kind of the power of rhythm, but also the power of sound. And so I played a setup where 16 toms set up in a semicircle, no sitting down, standing up. And so it's a whole different approach, which I learned from a Japanese percussionist named Stomu Yamashita, who I worked with in the 70s in London with a project called Go. And so that was the beginnings, just me and Jeff. And I recorded I recorded it in one studio here. It's called Bob Lang. And the story behind that studio is kind of like the movie Fitzcarraldo. Ceilings were like 20 foot high, and I thought that would be cool. Then I realized it's just too much, and there wasn't enough definition. So I went to another studio here that's well known called London Bridge and re-recorded that stuff. And then listen, I lived with it for a bit, and it just sounded a bit new agey to me. It was beautiful, but I wanted something else. So as people came into town, it was an additive process where, speaking of that Bumber Drum and Bumbershoot Festival, they would bring people in, international artists and Bumber Drum as well. So I ended up having Airto and Zakir Hussain come in at the same time and add tracks. And this is before Trey or anything as well. So, and then Jack DeJohnette was in town, and I invited him to play, and so he played. And it started adding up, and I just kept living with it and living with it. And I started loving it more and more. But it was one of those piece by piece sort of recording that I lived with over time. And then after quite a few years, I started questioning myself, like, why am I not putting this out? What's wrong with me? Am I procrastinating? Is it fear that people aren't going to like it? And I got offered to see a shrink for 6 months for free because of a new insurance plan. And I said, okay, I'll do that. I did it. And over time, this record came up where I brought it up, and I said, I'm really curious why it is that I haven't put it out. I don't know if it's procrastination or people won't like it, and I kept talking about it. And what I realized is I really love this record. I really love the music I made. And I put out quite a number of solo records and things like that with good people. But basically it's kind of like, it's so busy out there in the music world that people don't really care, you know what I mean? I mean, let's get honest here. So what I realized in talking with this woman is that the reason I haven't put it out is because it really means the world to me. I really like this music, and it turns out that I'm making this music just how I want to make music, and it feels like real special to me, and kind of a picture of where I'm at in so many ways, like spiritually and musically, and how to use drums. And so then I thought, I don't want to put an album out if nobody gives a shit about it. I'd rather just have it for myself and really enjoy it. But in talking through it, I realized, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Since I talked through it, it's sort of like, do whatever you want to do. I mean, just fucking do whatever you want to do. Make yourself happy. And that's the kind of thing that you should put out as an artist, I think. Is like, whatever you think is beautiful and meaningful to you is what you should offer to people. It shouldn't be something that you think, oh, they're going to like, they want this part of me and they want this part of me and they like the, and they still fucking like Woodstock and they're, it's like, it's kind of like, I mean, it's like a thing. And so once I got to that point, I realized, okay, it's time to put it out. And then of course I added stuff until the last hour when I had to deliver it to the label for the deadline. I kept tweaking it. It came out perfectly. So that's the story of why it took me 20 years to put out.
There's a book title that remember when they used to have bookstores? I was in So I was in the bookstore, and this title was "What Other People Think of You Is None of Your Business." I just love that title because it really, I hear what you're saying. Before you and I played together, before we had met, I had been playing with Sonny Sherik. I've always loved the avant-garde. I just hear that sound. I started fooling around playing with all these different rock bands, everything from Aztec Two-Step to Humble Pie. And within and amongst all of that, it was great. I learned a lot and everything. But here I am, an older guy, and I'm doing exactly what I want to do. And I actually really don't care what anyone thinks of it. And I think maybe we all get to a certain point in our lives where, hey, how much time do we have left? I enjoyed what I've done, but now it's all about me. I really identify with what you're talking about. Moreover, I really like the record.
Thank you.
And then also, the record gave me a chance to go, Jesus, I haven't heard Drums of Passion in a million years. And Wasn't there a Coltrane record at the Olatunji Center, the last record he ever did? So you really you sparked me to go into areas I used to be, and loved it all. And great stuff, really great stuff. And I'll tell you, Trey's solo records too, they are very, very unique. They really are. It's great stuff.
Yeah, he's a very unique artist, and he puts his money where his mouth is, as an artist. I mean, he really does. If you're going to do it hard, and that's one that does it that way. And yeah, I mean, Olatunji, that incantation that he does on the record, he starts the record. The record starts basically with his voice. That comes from another recording that I had done with the ex-Santana members called Abraxas Pool. We did Jingo, which was on the original Drums of Passion record. And Santana recorded that tune, Jingo, on their first album. So the whole thing is so full circle. Anyway, we recorded Jingo, but Olatunji and his crew did these incantations, but the band decided not to use them and just go cut to the tune. And I always thought, this is so beautiful. The guy's voice is so resonant, and this has got life, and this has got dirt and soil. And so I wanted to find a place for it. And so I just put it in here and structured it so that it came in 2 different times, and we played around it. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful, I mean, there's so many things kind of coming together at that, the first album of Drums Compassion, the first Santana album, and then Abraxas Pool. And yes, last gig Coltrane did was with Olatunji. Yeah, I mean, that tune is a blend for me of a couple of influences. This first tune on the record, which is called The
Call of Michael Olatunji.
Call of Michael Olatunji, right? Yeah. And I really like that title because it's so cinematic. It's like a story. So that tune is a combination of Dr. John, Gree Gree. You remember that?
Yes, sure.
Absolutely.
Vibe, and Gil Evans, Las Vegas Tango. It's a combination of those chord changes, but the vibe and that rhythm is like Gree. That hit me so hard when I was like 19 years old. I just thought, wow, is this, man? I mean, this is like voodoo music,
Gree Gumbo Yaya.
Yeah, and that voice and the tempo, and that was like magic to me. So you don't want to forget those moments in your life. You want to actually, you want to go back to them and touch them and share them in some way. It's not necessarily you got to steal the thing, but to reach into that atmosphere that took you someplace, so that you could perhaps take somebody someplace on your own as well. Me, I want to be transformative. I really wanted to take people on a journey. I didn't want to just be tunes. I really want, I was going to have much more environmental sounds and Atmos mix stuff, which I am doing. But in the future, I'm going to do that more and more and have much more like wind and ocean and walking in the, just so, because whatever, just take people someplace.
Yeah.
Remember Environments records?
Yeah, very much. I had them all. Yeah.
Well, I used to study with Irv Tybell, experimental sound recording. Do you know that he was actually called to the Senate panel on the Watergate trial because he proved that you can edit tape and no one would know the difference. So he was an expert. As a matter of fact, at the end of the course, he gave everyone a copy of Nixon's speech and said, edit it so I don't know you edited it. And that was the whole thing. It was really wild.
Wow. Yeah, I know. And nowadays, I love manipulating, even like younger years with Santana and stuff, some of the more experimental stuff, which mostly came from me. Like I loved editing, like on Caravanserai, that sax opening, that's like 28 separate edits that I did just to kind of create a avant-garde feel sort of flow sax vibe with crickets. And so this is kind of all in tune and aligned with myself. And I want to get more and more into it. Now the sounds, God, there's so many sounds that you can get. And some of my favorite artists are like that type of artist. Like one of the artists on the album named Amon Tobin. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Amon Tobin. I got into him in the 80s. And he doesn't even play an instrument. He just like samples and edits and puts things in. But he's one of my favorite artists. Now he's like master at sound. And so I always wanted to do something with him. And we did that together. Oftentimes, that's what I do. I'll find an artist that I find really compelling. I'll seek them out like a heat missile. I'll just stay on them and see if it's going to work, if we have a vibe, and try to do something together, And I do that. I did that with Stomy Amashta for that Go project. He was an avant-garde like percussionist. Some of the great composers in Europe were writing specifically for him percussion, classical. And then he stopped that and started a theater company in London. And I love those kind of people where they're just not so bound by the usual stuff. And so I sought him out for a good year. Finally, we met and we just fell in love with each other. But he was starting a pop group with Steve Winwood. I wanted to do the avant-garde percussion, and he had got Steve Winwood and some other people, and Al Di Meola did it as well, and Pat Thrall from Automatic Man. And then from him, I got introduced to Klaus Schultz, the German synthesist. And so I think that's like a fabulous life where you continually, because you seek one thing, some interests that you have, right? Just like you were saying, David, about I always love the avant-garde. It moves me enough. I'm attracted to it. That's what you said. And so I think that the thing to do in life is to move toward those urges. And as we get older, it seems like, looking back on my career, I've done that. But as we get older, it's more like let those little whispers like become very loud in your head. And
well put. Yeah.
Amplify the whisper, knowing it's a nudge from God to say, this is where you should go, boy. Just go this way. And one of the things I came to when I was talking to somebody about doing music is that people don't want you to copy something you've already done. People don't want you to copy another artist or sound like this or sound like. What people want is proof of existence, that somebody has gone deep enough into themselves and found something enough that they want to really bring it out and present it to the world. And that takes a little more work, a little digging deeper, but that's the thrill of it. And I feel like I've got a new lease on. I mean, I just turned 75, but I feel like I've got a new lease on life by just waking up to and acknowledging and having a hyper awareness of the things that you're attracted to, and not just musically, all kinds of ways.
It's so true. It really is. You're so right on about that. I just turned 71, and when the muse calls, you cannot. I mean, you could. Oh, I'm not going to do it, but you really can't. You are compelled, completely and utterly compelled to go for it. There's no point to being here if you do not.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, I mean, so. That's what I'm doing, is encouraging people to do that. When people ask for advice, it's very difficult to give advice, really, but you got to trust yourself. And you also got to continue to be curious and listen to new stuff. One of the things I've fallen in love with doing is AI art. And I'm as excited about that as I was like looking at drum catalogs when I was in my teens. So I just figure I've been doing it for several years and I'm getting better and better at it. And it's find it really attractive. This is a difficult conversation I've gotten in family arguments about it. It's almost bringing up like Trump or something. I just see everything as a tool, but blend it with yourself, blend it with your human aspects. You don't have to just use that, do the blend of, hyperintelligence and yourself. So anyway, I think it's exciting times.
That's a topic David and I have addressed on many shows, AI. And obviously it's the new technology de jour. Certainly there are issues with AI. Some people see it as plagiarism software. I look at what Paul Jackson did with the Beatles' Get Back documentary, where he actually restored all that footage was not able to be used. The sound wasn't together, and he did wonderful things with that. Paul and Ringo AI'd John and George and made a song. Paul AI'd John for a duet in concert. So, and I think, again, AI, like you say, it's who has the tools, and it's just a tool. It's just, look, AI, the electric guitar in 1935 was considered AI. That instrument behind me, the electric bass, which, David, you were told was not a real instrument at Berkeley, right? Okay,
That's right. John Mev says that the electric bass is not a valid musical instrument.
Oh.
It's all relative, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I know really wonderful artists that are really great at Photoshop and hate AI and really are offended by it. I'm like, well, what about you in Photoshop, dude? I mean, isn't that cheating? What about, shouldn't you just be can you just take a picture? Why should you manipulate it? Why can't you get it in real time? And so it's kind of like rock and roll.
Here's AI, David. It's a eraser on a pencil there, right? That's AI. Well, now Olatunji, now you have his voice on. Is his percussion at all? Any of his percussion tracks on the? No, that's not on there.
It's just his voice and his crew, the guys that were with him. Percussion is Airto, DeJohnette, and
Raul Rekow.
that's on another track. But
Okay,
yeah,
right.
and a great percussionist that I found on Instagram from Munich in Germany, named Stefan Moss. Found him on Instagram. He was just posting all the time. And I thought, this is so cool because it's not Latin, it's not African, it's not Brazilian, it's more like cinematic. And I thought, that's what I want. So I started putting him on everything I had. And he makes everything better. And he's on a bunch of stuff that I have coming out as well. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm in the time of collaborating, probably. I've always been a collaborator, but I think my collaborations are going to get, first of all, I'm going to put out music more quickly and not take 20 years to do stuff. Second of all, I'm going back in time and listening to music that I've done in the past, but never thought to put out because it was so avant-garde or weird, electronic. Now, and I've got these live recordings of gigs where I'm doing this stuff, like just electronics and a trumpet player, and I'm putting them out. I put them in the computer and I clean them up and I edit them how I want. And I do the album cover and I put them out on Bandcamp. So it's sort of like there's a lot of stuff that I know for myself. It's probably true for a lot of people that I've done in the past that didn't measure up to getting a record deal or this, that, or the other. And now you don't have to worry about that. I mean, you have to be conscious of whether it's quality or not. That's for sure. I'll never forget the days of when mp3.com was here. Remember that, guys?
Oh, yes.
It's like, oh, we're all liberated. Everybody's free. They can put out music. Soon enough, we found out that's why they have A&R people.
Right. There's so much. Well, it's interesting you say that because now you do have more artistic freedom in the digital era that we're in now because you don't have to worry about physical inventory. For example, David has an improvisatory group, and you did a great show last night at Silvana.
And of course, Tom was lecturing me to put the stuff out.
I said, put it out, man.
And oddly enough, it's trumpet, drums, and bass with all these effects pedals. So,
right.
Where'd you do the gig?
Silvana.
It's a club called Silvana
in Harlem on West 116th Street.
Oh, so you guys are in New York City.
Yeah, I'm in New York City. David's in a place called Connecticut. But yeah, I encourage him to put this stuff out because, again, you don't have to worry about physical inventory. And of course, I took all the band's free drink tickets as well, but that had no effect on my decision making.
And he's taking 30%, but
I take 30%. It's interesting. Yeah, again, we do have that artistic freedom now. Of course, there is the problem with musicians get paid pennies on the dollar for.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
I'm looking. There are companies now online stuff for you, but if you're putting it out on Bandcamp and it sells like this much or that much, it's embarrassing, like to pay the people, but maybe a flat fee or something like that. But I still think, David, did you record it?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I recorded, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a good thing to put it out. Edit it, do whatever you want to it, anything you want to it. I mean, add tracks, do this, however you feel. I think that sometimes things don't have to be as pure as we think they should be, that it's a starting point, and then you can add to it because the initial element of it is so spontaneous and human and beautiful. And then you can add to it whatever you want. Let's put it this way, there's no rules.
Exactly. To echo that, what I do when I'm playing with this particular group, I have this wonderful eventide pedal. And what I do is I just click the pedal, I hit a note, whatever sound is coming out of it, we go with that. So it's almost, I'm thinking of putting like a wheel of fortune wheel on stage and have numbers 1 to 40 and just go. Yeah. And I have absolutely even less idea of which effect is going to be coming up and just go with it. Yeah. And the people that I'm playing with are just phenomenal. I don't know if you know who Daniel Carter is.
Familiar with the name.
Yeah, great woodwind player, also plays trumpet, clarinet, and a guy named Mac Gallahan. who is, I mean, everyone from Duran Duran to Bobby Santamaria. So it's like a
Yeah.
wild group. Everyone comes together as you're doing to just create sound, which I just think is the most beautiful thing.
And I love the idea. I have a friend named Pat Thomas, who you might know if he's a music writer and a
Oh, I
writer.
know Pat very well. Yeah, yeah, he's written fabulous books. Yeah, he's a curator. He's a producer. Yeah, he lives out in Seattle or no?
No, he's in LA. He was
He's in LA.
a really cool group, like psychedelic improv group called
Yeah.
Mushroom. And he sent me a CD, and I'm like, you get CDs, and this is why I'm very aware of it as well. Nobody wants to listen to a CD. It's like you're almost offended. But I listened to it and I put it on for a second time. I thought, this is so cool. And it's improvised. And I thought, how fun is that? I heard an album last week, which really surprised me. And it was Sean Ono Lennon's record, a new record. Oh, and I was going to mention it's on John Zorn's label, but John Zorn used to do that kind of improvisation.
Right.
Right, back with the Frizzell and Wayne Horvitz and those guys. Sean's record really brought me back to like 70s improv, and it was so cool. It's not songs, it's all instrumental. I was really impressed. It really took me to a place that I thought, now that sounds like something that'd be fun to do. And it was well put together, and I really enjoyed it. I think if I don't do even much live stuff, but I think if I did, I'd make it completely improv. I'm doing more and more electronic stuff. So I've got like 3 different drum electronic setups, not drum set, mind you. It's more like sonic stuff. And I'm really looking to do solo performances of just like sound. But my instincts, of course, rhythm's going to come into it. And it seems like I'm more and more interested in like, sound design almost, and then putting the rhythm in later as the opposite of what we grew up doing, and then seeing what the human element can be after the electronics and that sort of vibe.
That makes total sense though, because you think of a soundscape, it's got its own ebb and flow. So instead of creating that after you put the rhythm in, let that be the rhythm that you create a rhythm to, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. And then you can put that human element, like the sound of a cymbal or just a pulse even, but with some snare and this and that. So it's like, I can have a vibe like Miles Smiles or something. You know what I mean? That kind of
exactly.
Thing, like underneath like a more ambient type of vibe. And it's exciting. I think it's just fun and exciting.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I wanted to tell you some of the other things that came up listening to your record. And you know what's really cool? Do you remember the very first Mark Isham record, Vapor Drawings?
Absolutely. It was one of my favorites.
Whoa, it's because of you and your record that I went back and listened to that one. It's great. Speaking of your record, As Above, as Below, right? That's the name of the track?
Below, yeah.
So I'm listening to it, and Skerritt's the sax player, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And I'm going, I got to put on Last Tango in Paris, because if you listen to his melody, ma na na na, and I was waiting for na 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 na. It didn't happen, so I said, "Fuck it, I gotta go get Last Tango in Paris again."
That's the way it is. That's how the internet is, right? Like I was amazed that the internet in the first days of the internet, it was just like one thing leads to another, which is how our curiosity works, right? In a natural way. But I think that's David. I think that's the way to do it. Like it reminds you of this, and it's going to drive you nutty until you pull that CD or record out and say, that was Gato Barberi, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mark Isham plays on my record called Stiletto.
Oh, okay.
80s, and it's an instrumental record, but it's like Mark Isham and David Torn and Andy Summers together.
Yes.
And so you might like that record. That's
well, we just had Dave Torn on the show. What was it, about a month or so ago, Tom?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. David's an old friend, man. You gotta love and respect him. He's a master at what he does, and I would like to do more with him. Yeah, we should do more. Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen you have on. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, we love talking to our record collection. I'm curious to know, you have so many different personalities on this record. Trey Gunn, Airto, Jack DeJohnette, Raul Rekow from the Santana's later bands. How are you as a band leader? Do they stick to the ink? Do you let them take liberties with what you give them?
Well, like I was saying, this record was like brick by brick. For instance, with Raul and Karl, Perazzo, who plays with Carlos still, I was on the road in the 80s. Carlos Santana called me and said, man, I just miss hanging out with you, because we used to just listen to music all the time. After the gigs, the girls would come to our room and leave because they were so bored. So,
Same here, David. But it wasn't for different reasons, I think.
Yeah.
I would literally have a travel trunk, but we had roadies, so they would carry it. I didn't have to worry about that. So I had vinyl, and I had a portable record player. And I also had the first portable Emerson cassette player. And so I'd have like that picture you have on the wall, Tom. I'd have like Bitches Brew. I have all that stuff, because that was when, we were listening to Sergio Mendes and Bitches Brew and other Brazilian music and Aretha and Weather Report, just Return to Forever, like with Airto playing drums. And so we were all over the place, like really enjoying this. And I think both of us haven't quite found somebody who enjoys like seeking out new music and sharing it as much as each other. So 80s, he called and said, I just miss hanging out, and I want to invite you to come out on the road with me, and we can think up something for you to do, and I'll pay you. So I was on the road with him. We were in Europe, and I was in Milan with him, and I had an offer to go in a studio, and this record, Drums of Compassion, was not done. I just said okay to the percussion, Raul and Karl, let's go in and record like some chants and this, that, and the other, and I'll pay you. And so later I took that and I put what's on top of it, that was from something else. So I'm like adding this from that, and I'm adding this from. So as a band leader, really, it wasn't really a band leader type of situation, except for stuff with Jack or Airto and that, and then I just let them go. And I've got multiple tracks of, them doing what they do. I mean, just listening to the Airto tracks by himself sounds like walking through a jungle. And that can be used in so many ways to come. So it wasn't like I'm in a room with all these guys.
More like it's like what Miles and Tio did, where they put things together.
It's exactly. I always think about Miles and Tio. I always think of myself as a producer like Tio. That's one of the good things about that whole process, is that just let the guys play. Miles gives a direction, the people play, and then Tio cuts it up and makes it sound like really startling and beautiful. I still subscribe to that. I did a record with Bill Frisell and Wayne Horvitz in the 80s or 90s or something, and we recorded a bunch of stuff, and I spent probably 6 months editing that shit. It's such a fun thing to do. I think it's an important part of the process. Now, that's one way to look at it. The other way is just to like let it rip and put that out as well. Don't sweat it. I tend to sweat things a little, but I want to end up with a thing of beauty.
I was talking with Tom last week. I said, wouldn't it be great if we could get a recording of everything that was done before Teo got to it? I mean, that would be extraordinary, just to hear what it originally was.
Well, you do now, thanks to digital technology, and I know Teo's spoken out against this. The box sets, the Jack Johnson and the Bitches Brew and the Silent Way box sets, that's the source tapes that they used. And according to Teo, and I think that was the Don Cheadle film was about this, is that Miles did not want anything released that he didn't say should be released. That, but again, Columbia had their jurisdiction. They really own the stuff. It's actually trickling out now because, again, they don't have to have physical inventory. I think last year, there was On the Corner, like outtakes from On the Corner and the source stuff from that. So yeah, you could see where Tio was such an important part, just like George Martin. Without George Martin, there would be no Beatle.
I'm thinking, Tom, like my favorite song on Bitches Brew, Spanish Key.
Yes.
Enters with a fade in. It exits with a fade out. What am I missing on either side? What's still going on there? Where is, Harvey Brooks? Where is this all going? That's what I want to find out.
Speaking of Spanish Key, I did a a live gig with I don't know if you guys know Patrick Gleason, the synth player that played in M1.
Sure.
I mean, Pat's almost like 88, maybe 90 now, right? And he's still making like really beautiful music. So he came up and we did a gig, myself and Pat and a sax player named Sam Morrison, who played with Miles for a minute, a brilliant composer. And I recorded the whole gig, portable Pro Tool setup. I had somebody record it. And then I started editing. I edited it so much, Patrick was really pissed at me for quite a while. But it was based off of Bitches Brew. And it was based off Spanish Key. And so some of the lines are, bass lines are based off that. But then I did the opposite thing that he wanted, and I cut out all of his solos and all his piano solos and this and that, and he was pissed. And I said, Pat, here's the thing, it's like what you're great at is like your incredible synthesis, you're an innovator, you're a pioneer. Now everybody's going to modular and you're like Ableton. You're past modular, and that's what you're great at. So I edited the shit out of it, but it sounds so cool. I'll have to send you it's not totally mixed, but after a year, he called me back and said he listened to it. He said, man, you're right. This sounds great. So
yeah.
It's just a groove, like crazy. It's like a Miles groove. I don't play anything fancy. And then recently I added that guy from Germany on it, other stuff flying around, which is not fast stuff, but just sonically, it's like, yeah, I'll have to. Sometime what would be cool is to do this kind of interview and then just play music while we're going.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, David, actually, I have this concept. It's David came up with the word. I think he got a copyright called Podformance, where we would talk and play. And,
we're going to do that in a live situation.
Live, well, of course.
Carter about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's it. I quite often think about, because we're talking about music so much in these interviews, and then it would just be, I guess one way to do it, I'm just like thinking out loud, would be, okay, let's get a short playlist together prior to the interview, and these are some things I might want to touch on and things that aren't released yet that would like check out the vibe. This is going, and I haven't even put the drums on it yet, sort of thing. That would be like pulling back the curtain and exploring the ideas or, methodologies of making music in different ways.
We don't have a problem with that on radio, but podcasts now, there is a restriction on actually playing music on a podcast.
But if we own it, if I own it.
That's right. You're right. There is an exception.
Yeah. I mean, for instance.
Well, Michael, I got to tell you something, though. The theme song for Notes from an Artist is a song from my The Orcalis record. And YouTube actually contacted me that I did not have the rights to use my own song. We fixed it, but I love that. I love that.
It's an algorithm, right? I shouldn't say this, but on my Bandcamp, I put all my solo albums out there. And some of my own, some of them I don't. But it's like, come and get me. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, I do.
So far under the fucking radar. It's like, and they're so big, they're not going to come after 25 cents or something. And also, I've already got my speech made out to the judge. You know what I mean? This is how I'm doing, and they don't pay me. So do you blame me?
Tom, tell him about the Lee Sklar incident with the James Taylor song.
What was that? That was when
what song was it?
I can't recall.
Smiling Face, right?
Right. He couldn't play the bass line to that because he was infringing on James Taylor's copyright.
James Taylor.
Yeah.
When the bass line was his.
I got caught on YouTube as well. When the band I was in the 80s, I put up some recordings and I got shut down by the copyright police.
Really?
I have the master tapes, 10 feet away from me. So
really,
I'm going to sue myself, David.
Wow. I don't know. Yeah, but I just figure it's like too big to fail. My records are too small to gather attention. It wouldn't be worth the cost of the attorneys, except they're all on retainer, of course. But
exactly
right. Well, when we spoke to Ron Carter, he has an attorney that does nothing but go after people who used stuff from his record sampled without permission. And I think what is Ron's rejoinder is, if you'd have called me, I'd have given you something better. So,
yeah, we did. I don't know if you guys have seen my my video podcast called Stick People. And,
no, I have to see that.
Okay, so this is 5 drummers. It's Lenny White, Mike Clark, David Garibaldi, Greg Rico, and myself. And we interview musicians. We interview and they're beautifully produced. And like Ron Carter's the one that's coming up next.
Oh, great. We'll have to check that out. Yeah.
It's quite a list of Larry Graham and John Schofield, Dennis Chambers, of course, the drummers, Peter Erskine. But Ron was incredible. I mean, that conversation, I came away so impressed with that man. It's just unbelievable. Yeah.
We did a show about his attire. Haberdashery. He has a company now that does bow ties and handkerchiefs. Pocket squares, yes. And we did a whole show on the fashion of Ron Carter. And let me tell you, he is a fashionista. He is Mr. Elegance. I mean,
he's right there with Roy Haynes and Miles. You know?
Yeah. Yes. And we really got deeply into it, that how you dress on the bandstand says so much about who you are as a player. And of course, he talked about Miles and the Italian suits, and I thought back of what Brian Epstein did with Beatles when he put them in Savile Row suits, and he made them accessible to the masses that way.
What was so cute is when he would go into his closet and bring out shoes, and it was show and tell with Ron's fashion closet. It was just great.
It'd be tough enough getting a gig with him, but you'd have to measure up sartorially to
he started a lot of that stuff. Everybody, Little Steven's got a wellness line out now, so it's like Sammy Hagar made $50 million from his tequila company.
We have to figure something out, David. Anyway, well, Michael, great having you on the show. We need to put together a Michael Shrieve playlist. Of course, we'll have Drums of Compassion, some tracks. What other tracks would you like us to put that you feel are representative of the work you've done? Just a couple.
Yeah. Well, I think, a couple of tracks from the album Stiletto with Mark Isham and David Torn, Andy Summers.
Okay.
I've got a compilation that I've put together of like 6 of my solo albums. Is just ridiculous. Like even film score stuff and this, and it sounds like a new record. That's in the can. I haven't put that out yet, but oh geez, go to my Bandcamp page.
Okay.
There's unreleased stuff there. Except like, for instance, that there's one called Live at On the Boards, and that's like I'm just all electronic percussion, but I'm not talking about Simmons, I'm talking about sonic stuff and the trumpet player. Just go around there and see what you like. And
all right, we'll poke around.
I'm definitely putting up Periscope. I love that song. It was great hearing it again.
We're putting out a new album. Like we've been putting out singles. Some of it's like old recordings that haven't put out old songs, like demo recordings, and then we have new tunes too with Novo Combo. So
how's Jack, by the way?
That's great. So we have a website called novocombo.com, and you can releasing singles. They haven't released the album. This is Stephen D's baby, this redone thing. And so I'm doing the album art for each of the releases, it's like keeps me interested. But we're putting out, I think, a new version of a Periscope or some.
All right, super. Thanks for being our guest. We'll have you back on. You're very prolific at this point, so I'm sure there are future projects we can talk about. And we'll definitely let you know when this airs, and we'll send you the links so you can compete with Kim Kardashian on on social media.
Yeah, do that.
Okay.
Plus, I'll have a haircut by next week. Maybe we can.
Good idea. All right, Michael, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, Michael Shrieve, for being a guest on our show. David, fabulous interview with Michael.
There's so much you can learn from this interview. I think it was a self-help manual for anyone who wants to be a musician. And as you said earlier, pretty well for any profession. The concept can be used for virtually anything.
David, let us talk about the Michael Shrieve playlist. What have you curated for us?
Well, I've curated a really interesting collection of tunes, some which Michael has played on, some which he actually recommended. Let's start with Novo Combo. A couple of tracks from Santana. He was in a band called Go with this incredible percussionist named Stomo Yamashita. A couple of songs from there, one live, one in the studio. From his solo recording career, we have Stiletto, The Great Ambassador, and a couple of tracks from his new album, Drums of Compassion. We have something by Carl Schultz, where Michael plays on. He really made a commentary on, that tune Gree Gree by Dr. John?
Yes, Gree Gree Gumbo Ya.
Yeah, so we're going to lay that on you. We're going to do a tune that was at Olatunji's Drum Center. It was literally the last recording of John Coltrane. He brings up Las Vegas Tango by Gil Evans. He also turns us on to this incredible soundscaper named Amon Tobin. And that should be it. A couple hours worth of music. I just couldn't stop.
David, I just love kicking back and listening to a Notes from an Artist playlist in the privacy of my own home.
Obviously, you have to do it at home because, no one wants to really see you.
With the curtains drawn. Actually, I do play the Notes from an Artist playlist out the window.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. My name is Tom Semioli. His name is David C. Gross. We'll see you again next week with another episode of
Notes from an Artist.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Bye-bye.
See ya.